Now, holding a bundle of joy for the first time after birth can be such a fulfilling experience for many parents. But not every mother needs to go through pregnancy for a number of reasons in order to be able to hold her bundle of joy. Adoption is an option for men and women who wish to become parents. However, some factors, including issues relating to culture, hold back these prospective parents from achieving their goals. Today is World Adoption Day. To discuss this, we're joined by World Adoption Day Ambassador Thabitha Dolamo and Indigenous African philosopher Joshua Maponga. A very good morning to both of you, and thank you so much for making the time. But Maponga, why is World Adoption Day such an important campaign?
Yeah, it has to be important only in the platform of who is advocating for such new norms of living in the African space. If you can ask me as an African person, if ever there was an orphan in the community, the answer is no. Because every society had a way of repositioning, swallowing back, replacing the children in the homes of the uncles and the aunties within the environment. But now the new dispensation is calling for children to move away from their family unit and cultural unit and totemic unit into other homes that are totally different from them. So we are seeing a breakaway, almost a dysfunction of the African society, which is calling on people with different totems and surnames to begin adopting children that belong to others.
Thabitha, I'm sure you disagree. For you, the importance of this day?
Sorry. It is a very important day to acknowledge and also to support the families that have adopted. And it is a very emotional process, and all families need to be supported. So this day needs to be acknowledged, and it is a significant day for all families that have adopted and even the adoptees, actually.
But Maponga, I hear what you're saying about Africans not necessarily having people that need to be adopted because everybody belongs in a society. But invariably, you will have those children who are strays, who are left out, that nobody looks after. What do we do in this case?
It's one way to try and fix the symptoms of a problem and ignore the root cause of the problem. The root cause is that the African family is now dysfunctional. This all started up in the concept of men being pulled over into mines, away from their families and homes, prostitutions in the hostels, irresponsible sex around the community, and then you have irresponsible, quote-unquote, fathers in some cases where these children are born and they don't even know who their fathers are. And I still want maybe to zoom in and say mothers are the key. Yes, I'm not absolving men from responsibility, but mothers are very, very important. Because how can a child be on the street and does not know who their mother and who their father is? And if the father fails to be responsible, it is the identity of the child is preserved always in the hands of the mother. But what we are looking at is a total collapse of the social fiber of the community, where children end up on the streets and they don't even have identity. I think it is one of the most important human rights that need to be entrenched in the Constitution, that every human being that is born into this world, particularly in our Constitution where we say we are democratic, one of the constitutional rights must be the right of identity. There's no child who must be born and they don't know, and they cannot be accounted for. And then social departments and other, good Samaritans must pick up these children and try to house for them. I'm not necessarily condemning that, not at all. But I want us to backtrack and see where is the source of this problem.
So while we are trying to backtrack and find the source, what to do with the children who do not have identity, who do not know where they come from?
There are two ways about it. One, it is to create a social database, which I think can be a national agenda. The issue we also face here is that government has no will to attend to some of these departments and some of these organizations that are trying to put the social fiber together. Say that the government could actually have an adoption center. They are the owners of the home office. They are the owners of identity. They are the owners of DNA workshops and everything else and scientific labs, where if there was a will in terms of the government to identify them and link them up to their family roots, it could be possible. But between now and then, when we are busy doing other government priorities, then adoption remains as an option. But I don't think that it is a long-term solution and sustainable in the long term in terms of the well-being of the children and the psychological framework of these children. You have another child that I saw the other day adopted by a white family, no malice intended. The child at the ages of 16 and 18 says, I see myself as a white child. I can no longer identify with black. So we understand that you can actually be adopted and totally lose your grassroots and your connection to your family and your family background. So it is important that we begin the conversation both end to end, from government, parastatal, and non-government organization. But most importantly, also, we want to support the families that are doing so and restoring the dignity of the children in this generation that is losing itself to Western colonial systems. And this is one of them. And I'm very passionate about it, because we cannot be putting cotton wool on our faces and saying this is the solution. Yes, it's a temporary solution, but the permanent solution is responsibility for parents so that children can be safe.
Thabitha, let's come back to you. Just listening to Maponga, what are some of the myths that are to be dispelled when it comes to adoption?
So one of the myths is the very same one that we're going to focus on this year, which is a child not having identity, a child not being able to the ancestors are not going to accept the child, and we're trying also to get people to understand that you don't have to be ashamed about the fact that you have an infertility problem, and it does not make you less of a woman. It does not make you less of a human being. It does not make you less of a couple, or even a single parent that wants to adopt. It does not make you less of a person. So we're also trying to shy away from those kind of conversations so that we can get a lot more people to adopt.
Are you cognizant of this conversation of the concerns between culture and living a life as an adopted person?
Yes, very much so. Very much so. Very much so.
And how are you dealing with those conversations?
Well, at the end of the day, I've always thought that I need to understand why I'm doing it, and I need to understand the reasons behind educating a child, giving a child a chance to have a good life, to have a normal upbringing. So we shy away from those kind of conversations as well.
But Maponga, in a situation where a family has successfully adopted, how should they be approaching the way forward?
The way forward could be economic, could be political, could be cultural, could be spiritual. Your question is quite broad, so I don't know where you'd want me to attend to, but if it is on a cultural platform, then it will mean that firstly, let me shout a word of caution. When you hear that your sister or your aunt or your whatever or your child is pregnant, every family must go closer to every pregnant woman, so that you cannot be telling me that you are willing to go and adopt a child from an orphanage, but yet your own young sister and your own cousin and aunt has got a child that you are not interested in. So it speaks to, if every family could be keeping track of its own family members in the unit, we could actually have a solution right there at the door of entrance into life. But in the event that the child has been adopted into a family, there are cultural norms that must be done. Of course, where the mother and father, there's an infidelity in the home, and the child is born in the family, and etc. How do you normalize and formalize a child who is not born of the bloodline of this family into this family in processes such as going up to an ant hill, putting meal there, and etc., and speaking to the forefathers and declaring this child that they are now going to become part of this family. The maternal side of things, that you use the mother's surname until the people who have pregnated your mother come to claim you. Unfortunately, again, I want to try and say we lack an intentional motivation from the government structures where you can harvest this indigenous knowledge system and make it available so that we can demystify some of these misunderstandings that are there. That if you should do it, if you should adopt, and you are scared that traditionally speaking, ancestors will not accept, how do you find someone who is outside of your family bloodline to be incorporated into your family structures? So yes, there's information, but it is scattered. It needs to be consolidated, and the community needs to be taught. Instead of some of these useless TV programs sometimes we usually do, I actually hope that for once in a while we can put our money where our mouths are and get involved intentionally and educate the community about such issues.
So, Maponga, both you and Thabitha have different constituencies. You represent a sector of society that says, let's go back to our roots. Or adoption. What do you think about her work?
She's doing a phenomenal work. Listen, in the absence of me advocating for culture, there's no child who must sleep under the bridge. There's no child who must be eating from a dustbin. There's no girl child who must be thrown away with the family because she has been pregnant. There's no way that the government can be talking about women's organizations and women's ministries because they want to deal with the abused and the raped. And you don't have a Ministry of Men's Affairs to deal with the perpetrators of the very crimes that you are dealing with. I find that to be totally obnoxious. You must be smoking some pipe. That you can rather be dealing to the victims than dealing to the root cause of the problem. The root cause of the problem are men who are having sex irresponsibly and then throwing away the women, and the children end up in adoption centers. So until and unless we're prepared to face the problem in our eyes and say, how do we deal with the root cause? I really applaud what Thabitha is doing and the organization. This is restoring human dignity. But the full marathon of the journey comes back to what we are talking about right now. And I bet you, in an event of an adoption, if the family steps forward and they say they want to adopt the child, and an outside family comes and say they want to adopt the child, priorities will always be given to the family of the blood, because then it restores that very cultural background that we are looking at, except for financial issues and other logistics that I might not know. But it will be very important that we consider, even in terms of research, before a child is adopted, if the government can just, through the Home Affairs, do a thorough research and find out who is this child, where do they come from, and send a letter or information to the family, we have one of your own here. For example, if I hear that one of the Maponga children right now is on the street, I have an extra room at my place. I could make a plan and go and pick up, though I might not know exactly or how I'm going to work around it, but I'll be prepared to look after my own blood. And every African has that in them. But to have a child on the street who is totally identityless, unknown, I want to call that the irresponsibility of the society in the highest order. But I appreciate what Thabitha is doing. Please keep up the good work, and I hope the Good Samaritan will give you enough financial support and will make noise to the government until they prioritize you also.
Thabitha, Maponga raises some very important points, and as you're listening to him speak, what are your thoughts about incorporating all of this in your ambassadorship and the work that you're doing to highlight the plight of adopted children?
Look, I totally agree with what he's saying, because in actual fact, the problems are not starting now. We have a problem of pregnant teenagers, and really it's a problem that needs to be dealt with. But at the end of the day, now the child is here, and the child needs to be looked after. And like he says, like he mentions, that we're trying to restore the dignity of the child. So we will continue to talk about adoption. We will continue to assist where we can in the process of people that want to adopt, families that want to adopt, because at the end of the day, we do have a problem of kids being in the streets and kids that do not have homes. So we will continue with the conversations going forward, talking about adoption and in encouraging adoption and doing it in the right way as well.
Thabitha, just give us a sense of the South African landscape. Are South Africans adopting? Which sectors of society are adopting? And what are some of the reasons that they have for taking on a child that you either collect from a hospital or from a foster home, not necessarily give birth to?
So since I started the journey, which is now our fourth year, talking about Adoption Day, I haven't heard a woman coming out saying that they had any fertility problem. I mean, they had a fertility problem, and I had a fertility problem, but I've always known that I was going to adopt, so we're probably going to end up with a lot more children. But when we realized that I have a fertility problem, then we then fast-track the adoption process. Most of the people that I have had conversations with, it differs between white and black. White people would say, I wanted to assist, I wanted to have a child, I wanted to have an extra child. I did not find a reason to give birth to a lot of children. Rather, I would adopt. And with black people, it has always been, we thought it's a good thing to do, but fertility has not been an upfront conversation, except when I mention it as well. And yes, across in South Africa, the people that I've had conversations with, the reasons are different between white and black.
So many different reasons that people want to embark on this journey. Just tell us about your particular journey. How have you found it, and how would you encourage other people to go about it?
My journey was just as long as any other person that would adopt. It was close to a year, and during the process, they identified a child, but unfortunately, they had to come back to us and say the child is not ready for adoption because the child is not a South African citizen. So then we had to wait a little longer for a South African citizen, a South African child to be born. And the process was long. But the support that I had from my husband, we also had some hurdles that we needed to cross to jump, especially when it comes to culture, because he was a bit reluctant, thinking about, will the child be acceptable? How will people look at us? How are we going to introduce the child to the family? But at the end of the day, it has been such an amazing journey. The child was 4 months when we got him. He is now 5 years and going to big school next year. It is such a wonderful journey. I know there's a gap that I filled in, and I don't have to be ashamed of myself not being able to carry a child biologically. But he just feels like part of the family. He fitted in. He's loved by everybody in the family, and really we have been so happy to have him around. And he does not feel like an adopted child anymore. Well, he never did, but he doesn't feel like an adopted child. And he has just added the number of people in the family, and we are so thrilled, and we don't regret actually embarking on the journey. And to the people that want to adopt, we say to them, be patient, know every day why you are doing it, and don't give up. It is a long process, but understand why you are doing it.
Well, such an important conversation, but obviously time constraints, but very, really strong views. And thank you so much for making the time to talk to us on World Adoption Day. Adoption Ambassador Thabitha Dolamo and Indigenous and African philosopher Joshua Maponga. Thank you so much for your time, both of you.